Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Riddle me this. What is more sweet than sour? And under an hour, it's a new serving of apple slice. A taste of apple on the regular. This episode, myself, Simon, along with Nick, talk typography and design direction of Apple, plus the very latest iPhone 7 rumours. We also tell it how it is with Aussie Apple Stores and throw some edible extras into the mix. So for a podcast potion that'll give you motion, jump down on a brand new apple slice. So, welcome to another episode. Nick, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. A lot of new news in the Apple space, so it's really exciting at the moment. How's it going with you?
Yeah, it's pretty full on as always. Got a end of financial year just over and all sorts of things happening. But Apple, as always, is what we love to talk about. So we have a few different topics in this episode. So I'm going to dive right in with product perception. So I want to talk about something I'm particularly passionate about, and that is typography. As some of the listeners may know, I'm a graphic designer, definitely into fonts and everything. And we want to look at Apple's typography in terms of what they've used for system fonts versus what they've used in their general marketing, being print, promotional, and packaging. So I'm only going to look at from the turn of the century onwards, so year 2000 to now. And there has been some uses of other fonts briefly, but mainly I'm going to look at the 5 that they've used overall. So that's Garamond, Lucida Grande, Myriad Pro, Helvetica Neue, and San Francisco. So if we start with fonts they've used for iOS, Apple TV, and Apple Watch, this is their system fonts. You had, so with the launch of the first iPhone, you had Helvetica in 2007. Now, when they released Retina display, you had Helvetica Neue. I'll just refer to it as Helvetica New, as that's what it translates to. That was when, Retina display came out in iPhone 4 in 2010. Now, with the big revamp of that came with iOS 7, 2013, you had Helvetica New Light, which, I think had a very strong positive reaction with the revamp. Now, this, a lot of people enjoyed how iOS 7 looked and the pullback from skeuomorphic design. But there was also in the background, there's a bit of a talk about Apple creating their own font to use across all systems. So previously, Apple has either used, an existing font or a variation of one. So with Apple Watch, it introduced San Francisco, which is Apple's own font. For the first time, it was a compact version called SF Compact, which they originally stated that it was designed to be specifically for legibility. So the small screen, they needed a font that to be able to be read quite easily at a glance. So the watch launched in April 2015, but we saw the design and the interface of the watch and San Francisco in the announcement in September 2014. So when iOS 9 came out, they replaced Helvetica New with San Francisco, so the actual standard version, not the compact version. Now this came with a lot of mixed reactions because people loved Helvetica and they were very used to how it looked, and so that generally kind of had half people complaining and half people liked it. Now, going to their desktop system fonts, you had Lucida Grande. So this is when they kicked off the naming of OS X. So with 10.0 Cheetah in 2001, all the way to Mavericks in 2013, they used Lucida Grande. And so that's 12 years. Then in 2012, they changed some of the fonts in their own programs like iTunes and iMovie. They changed that to Helvetica, so kind of started introducing it. But Lucida remained as the primary system font. It's not until 10.10, so Yosemite in 2014, Helvetica Neue became the system font. And so that tied it all in with iOS 7 revamp and brought all their systems into line. Then, of course, Watch came along in between that, and El Capitan, 10.11 in 2015, you saw San Francisco. Now, just I'll quickly cover also what else they've used font-wise in the marketing space. So Apple had used a Garamond variant called Apple Garamond. It had been around since 1984 with the Think Different campaign, and they used that all across until 2002, so it's 18 years. And then, of course, the iPod came out, and that was really the product that just launched Apple into, that they got massive with iPod and everything that came out after that. And with that, they had a brand revamp, and Myriad Pro, well, a variant of it called Myriad Apple was used. And essentially all of their packaging and advertising and everything changed accordingly. So by late 2013, there was a lighter version of Myriad font that was used prominently. So you can see that if you compare iPhone packaging and that sort of thing. And Myriad Pro is still the primary marketing font for Apple to this day. Now, the Apple Watch logo uses San Francisco. And around the time of WWDC this year, we saw heavier weights of San Francisco being used in advertising, such as the Add Beats to Your Summer sort of advert, and which you can see still running on apple.com. So for a while, we've had a few different fonts at once. It's kind of now down to two. Nick, what's your thoughts on San Francisco, and do you think they will do away with Myriad Pro completely?
I'm quite a fan of San Francisco. I think, as we've discussed before, just to quickly cover off what they were using with Helvetica New, we've discussed before that I'm not a fan of bold, so that was or Helvetica New Light. That was probably my favorite. As you mentioned, quite a few people weren't too happy when they moved over to San Francisco. I wouldn't say that it was the world's biggest deal for me, but I do like its legibility, and I also like the fact that it's now consistent across all devices. So that's something that really I've always appreciated about Apple, is that everything was consistent and made sense and worked really well together. So it's good to see that they're getting back to making sure that all details are covered, from the font to advanced features like handoff and that sort of thing. So I'm quite a fan.
Oh yeah, the main thing for me is I had no problem with Helvetica New. I loved it, but when they released San Francisco and I knew it was a completely custom Apple font, that's when I was just taken back by it. Like I liked how it looked and everything in all different weights. But the fact that it's Apple's own, I was actually almost kind of disappointed that they didn't call it Sans Francisco as a bit of a play on words, being a sans serif font. But I'm a big fan, and the only awkward thing for me is, like, I get the idea of keeping one font for systems and one font for the print and the packaging and that sort of thing. But now they've kind of crossed it over, as I mentioned, with that Add Beats to Your Summer and that sort of thing. I don't like seeing a mix. I kind of think they should run with, if they're going to run with one for all headings, then do that. And if they're still going to run with Myriad Pro for body text and that sort of thing, they should. But when they kind of mix it around, I had this same sort of feeling when basically Apple Watch came out, and then it introduced this third font, and having the words Apple Watch, their logo in one font and everything else is Myriad, and then Helvetica was still floating around. Yeah, I just the font OCD in me was, it was kind of shaken up a bit. So I mean, they've been using Myriad since iPod, launch. So 2002. I mean, do you actually think that it'll go away, or?
I'm not sure. I don't think it'll go away anytime soon or in one cohesive sweep. So it'll probably just get phased out over time.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. And they've, as I said, they've begun this transition, but it's definitely not. Everything has been kind of transitional with them. As I mentioned, when they used Garamond for so long, and suddenly they just switched completely over to Myriad Pro. That was a big sort of short, sharp change from memory, anyway. And at least they've whittled it kind of down to two main font families now. But yeah, I mean, I'm still a big fan of both, so I'm not complaining. But yeah, we'll just really remains to be seen what happens now. So I just want to move on to Rumour Mill. iPhone 7, of course, is the big one everyone's waiting for. Now there's been a lot of rumours floating around the Apple space around this. A lot of people saying, it's going to be disappointing because of lack of features or lack of a complete redesign and that sort of thing. I think the opposite of that. We've broken it down into a few different categories of rumours per se. So starting with the colours, we've seen a potential for a dark blue colour or a darker space grey or even a space black, as they're calling it. So what are you feeling about these colours here?
Yeah. So just quickly, we have a date for the iPhone 7 supposedly should be announced on the 12th of September. So that's for me to look forward to. I think you won't be getting one still unless you decide to go mid-cycle, but I'm pretty keen for that. My phone is starting to give up. It barely charges, so I'm considering getting the battery pack now so that I can have like a working lightning port that my charger plugs into. So anyway, that aside, I think the color-wise, we'll probably end up with just a darker variation of space gray. Believe me, if there was a space black, I would instantly go buy a brand new Apple Watch, hopefully Apple Watch 2 in space black, as well as a space black iPhone. I would be obsessed with it. I don't think it's going to happen. Just based on the mock-ups that we've seen so far, I haven't seen any color variations, and some of them are blatant fakes, but I just think we would have seen a chassis leak if that was the case by now. I would really, really love a space black though. I think that they don't quite have one idea of a space gray. There are at least 6 different shades of space gray, which irritate me, but I think this is just a variation of that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. As you said, it's getting down to crunch time for the release. Haven't seen enough of this dark blue. I've only sort of seen a few kind of rumours about it. So yeah, I sort of think that one's much less likely, but yeah, you're definitely going to at least get a space grey and hopefully a space black. So yeah, I mean, I've always gone for the darker iPhone anyway, so either option is cool for me. Now, of course, we've come back to the headphones and the removal of the headphone jack rumours. It seems pretty much very likely that the headphone jack is going now. I mean, it's appearing in every single possible rumoured mock-up and everything like that. Now, what it comes down to is, do you think they will release actual Lightning AirPods, or, as we've seen a couple of times already, simply an adapter, which to me is unlikely? I mean, what's your feeling about that?
Yeah, I think an adapter in the box, I think, is extremely unlikely. I think you're just going to get Lightning AirPods and an adapter sold separately. I think an adapter in the box, given, as you've already mentioned, some people are saying, there won't be much difference in terms of design. Given that, and then, so it's going to look mostly the same, but not have a headphone jack. And then they're going to have potentially have a headphone jack adapter. It's like, why don't you just put it in there in the first place? Like, I think if they have to move away from a headphone jack, it has to be because the technology isn't relevant anymore, or at least they're trying to move it forward. I get that there's a reason for it. And as I've said, my headphone jack hasn't worked in a while, so maybe I'm biased. But I think that having an adapter in the box would be an admission that, well, maybe that it is still useful. And so I don't see that likely. Just again, in terms of the leaks I've seen 2 separate Lightning AirPod leaks, which have it's a different looking connector. It's a bit more durable looking, although the actual earphone cord is thin as usual. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. There was also the potential of AirPods, or whatever they end up naming them, which would be completely wireless speakers.
Yeah, that's that one's an interesting one, because I still think that they will have Lightning AirPods as what comes in the box. AirPods would be could be an upsell, or whether they even bother with that and they just kind of try and upsell to wireless Beats headphones. But
do you think they would Beats brand those so that then, or any variation is not actually AirPods but just Beats branded?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, generally, I kind of think that they're going to have your Lightning AirPods, and then just your over the top of the head wireless proper Beats headphones, and yeah. So the chance of having AirPods, I think, is maybe 50-50, but it's more if they're not connected to each other, at least the left piece and the right piece. Yeah, you do come into that. Obviously, if you drop it and you lose it, that's it. So I don't really know where they're going to go with that. I mean, there are a few wireless in-ear style headphones like that do exist, but I would feel quite uneasy buying them, because I could just imagine falling out and, well, there you go, you've lost them. So moving on to the actual hardware itself. So there's been rumours of a larger earpiece, a Force Touch ID home button, the volume buttons being just touch buttons rather than actual kind of physical click buttons, and the rumour of them removing the mute switch. So what's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I think especially when you look at most of those features, so like the Force Touch ID home button, the touch volume buttons, and the no mute switch, they all get rid of moving parts and actually just keep the phone as one solid part. So I think that any of those adjustments would be to make the phone waterproof. So I don't know how vocal they would be on the waterproofing of it, unless, it's a tentpole feature of the phone. We saw massive waterproofing improvements from the 6 to the 6S, and Apple never even mentioned it. And so the larger earpiece would be, I guess, interesting. I don't know. I don't really have problems with the current earpiece, but why not, I suppose?
Yeah, basically, that's sort. I totally agree with you. Any of these are a move to, basically creating the ultimate sort of waterproof phone by not having any kind of moving parts that water could get into. So, if they essentially move to just, the Lightning port being the only kind of hole in the device, and that sort of thing, then yeah, I really feel like they're building up to this ultimate waterproof phone. I mean, the Galaxy has advertised waterproofing, for a couple of releases now, and as you say, the 6S actually had all right waterproof capabilities, but they didn't advertise it. And I think the reason they don't is because, I think as soon as you say to someone it's waterproof, they're going to be like, oh, sweet, I can take it in the ocean or something.
Yeah, so there were actually 2 Galaxy Active phones, the S7 Active. They did 2 tests. I think it was Consumer Reports or one of those that did a test on those phones, and actually found both of those phones to not be waterproof at all, and the 6S to have better waterproofing. So it would be, I guess it's touch and go whether to actually advertise or to just have it as a backup for people that need it, like if you pushed in the pool or something. So the other thing is on iOS 10, the latest beta, there's a warning if you put in a lightning connector and there's water in the lightning port. So that also points towards some waterproofing. Look, it's there on the 6S, the 6 and all the other phones. So, it's not guaranteeing waterproofing, but it's just an interesting nod to, being aware of water being in the port. So we'll see where they go with that.
Yeah, I think if they do, they'll probably mention it in a subtle way with this release, but I don't think it'll be until the iPhone 8 or 7S or whatever it's called next year, with the supposed more of a redesign, more of a single piece kind of piece of hardware that they would really tout, that waterproof feature. They don't want to come out of the gate swinging, saying that, this is the ultimate waterproof phone now, and it not be, 100% ready, because there's going to be a ton of videos doing rigorous testing on this sort of thing. They always do kind of screen break tests, durability tests, now obviously more of like waterproof testing and that kind of thing. And yeah, you don't want to end up with like an antenna gate situation. Yeah, I can imagine saying this is a waterproof iPhone, and then something happens where they prove that it's not or whatever, and it would, considering they're expecting the sales of this one not to have a spike per se, and just to kind of coast until the year after, for some sort of scandal about waterproofing to come out, would hurt them in a very bad way. So there you go.
Yeah, they historically understate the waterproofing anyway. Even on the Apple Watch, I use my Apple Watch in the sea. I've swum with it in the sea, in the pool. They do say that you could shower with it, but even more rigorous tests on the Apple Watch have shown that it's more waterproof than Apple has said. So I know that they sometimes overstate, some things, how amazing something is, but generally not on waterproofing, interestingly. So the other hardware improvements are in the camera, especially in the Pro models. So it sort of looks like the camera's been pushed through the metal and the single and dual lens in most of the sort of leaks or mock-ups that we've seen. So that's the sort of edging that we've spoken about, whereas now the whole camera module just sits right in the phone. There's just like a complete circle cut out that would be more tapered onto the edge of the lens, so it actually looks like it's built into the body, even though there's still a bump. Then there's potentially a smart connector for the Pro model, which I think could be used for a battery sort of case or some connector. It would be interesting to see what they come out with. There's a patent to disable iPhone camera at live events, which they've gotten a lot of heat for. There's a petition to ask them to not, use that patent. And Apple has a lot of patents that they don't use, that, it's just ideas that they come up with. So, I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. I don't think they're likely to go with that, given how it could be used not for good. And hopefully they'll think of that in terms of their privacy issues. Now imagine, sort of an iBeacon that could be placed at a live event to stop camera, filming something. Essentially, like a police officer could carry the same iBeacon and then stop someone from filming something. Just thinking of what's been happening in the US lately, doesn't bode well. So let's see what happens there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that I think it'll do more bad than good. I get the idea, because I'm one that gets annoyed at people that film a whole live show when they're there. You see more and more of actual bands and musicians pointing out people that are just on their phone the whole time at a show, because really you're there for the live experience, and you sure take a few photos, take a video snippet, but don't just film the whole thing and bootleg it. So I'm definitely against people doing that. You pay to see an artist, and you should respect the fact that they're there, performing for everyone. But to actually, for the iPhone to somehow detect whether it's based on location and events and that sort of thing, and disable the camera by default, I would assume, it's just going to open it up into like it'll decline iPhone sales, I think, for sure, and rivals such as Samsung will take a massive dig at it. I mean, sure, they put the patent there. I appreciate the idea, but I don't think they should do it. So before you mentioned Smart Connector for a Pro model, so are you actually now kind of feeling more like there will be a Pro model? I'm more of the mindset that it'll just be the standard and the plus.
Yeah, I think it'll be standard and plus. I know a lot of the media is going for the Pro. I think the Plus model may well have a Smart Connector, but I don't think they'll brand it as a Pro. I just don't like. I get Pro in MacBook and iPad, especially given the fact that they want iPad to be seen as a work replacement. I don't get a Pro phone though. Like, phones are for everyone, so I just don't get that branding.
Yeah, and then the fact that the Pro would only be for that larger screen as well. I mean, would you end up with an iPhone Pro and then iPhone Plus Pro or something? It doesn't really make sense. I think that it's more of, this is the rumor mill coming into effect. You know, I just think this time around with iPhone 7, we've probably seen more mock-ups and more videos, whether they're fake or real, already. And the likelihood of it, I'm not really feeling it. It'll be confusing, and it'll probably just ruin the sales of Plus if they did release it. But unless the Pro is vastly different, I kind of don't think it's that a great idea. And of course, we are looking at 32 gigs being the entry-level point for storage. I mean, this is only a good thing, right?
Yeah, surely. I think that'll be sufficient, should be right. I see. I've got the 32 gig iPad Pro in my 9.7 inch model, and yeah, it's pretty decent, I think. There's also been, recently went on an app cleanse, which coincidentally some of the bigger publications also are advocating cleansing some of your apps that you actually never use. So on my phone, at least, I'm down quite a bit, but my photo library and music are more than 32 gigs, so that would never be enough for me there.
Yeah, I mean, that many people have been waiting for the 16 entry level, storage point to go, and 32, it makes sense. And we're also looking at reports of the battery in the 4.7 inch being physically 14% larger than the 6S. If they got the space, they might as well, because a lot of people prefer the plus size because of the battery life. I can only think that can be a good thing. So moving on to the deal down under. Now, in Australia, we have, significantly less amount of Apple stores, but considering our size, for some people they can be hard to access. Some people may not even know where exactly they are. So I'll just quickly list off for you where you can find Apple stores around Australia. So in ACT, you have Canberra, New South Wales, which has 9 of them. There's Bondi, Broadway, Castle Hill, Charlestown, Chatswood, Hornsby, Miranda, Penrith, and Sydney. In Queensland, you have Brisbane, Carindale, Chermside, and Robina. South Australia has Adelaide. Victoria has Chadstone, Cheltenham, Doncaster, Fountain Gate, and Maribyrnong, if I pronounce that correctly. And in WA, we have Burragoon and Perth. So, Nick, what's the closest one near to you, and how often do you go there?
I think the closest one to me is either in Carindale or Chermside. I don't go to either of those ones. I go to the one in Brisbane, and I used to go there probably once every 2 weeks. When I ventured into Brisbane, we usually make that part of the day, just going and checking out the Apple store. So yeah, I would, in the past couple of months, I haven't done that, but it's quite regular that I would have usually gone and checked out the store. It's about an hour and a half journey for me. So yeah, it's more that when we're down in Brisbane, we'd just check out the Apple store, not really go there for it. So when I bought my iPad, I unfortunately didn't get it through the store, and I usually just order stuff online and get it delivered.
Yeah, for me, okay, so I am 5 hours drive away from the closest store. Technically, Booragoon is part of Perth, so it's two of them in Perth. Now, Perth is the world's most isolated city, and WA is the world's largest state. So you can you can kind of imagine the amount of vast empty desert land in my home state, because we get 2 Apple stores that are essentially right near each other. But hey, they're cool. I like to drop in, check it out. Always impressed by the displays. The staff have always been very friendly, and it's hard for me sometimes to not kind of, if especially if you've got a new iPhone or Apple Watch, to stand there and stare at it, about 2 centimeters away, trying to check out the pixel density and that sort of thing, without looking like a bit of a weirdo. So I have to walk in and sort of contain my Apple fandom a little bit, because otherwise I feel like I could probably stand there and talk to them all day about it.
So how long between when you, like, let's say an item's in stock, given that you're 5 hours away, I just want to understand, like, if you were to order something on the online or on the app, on the online store, and it's in stock there, usually for me being regional, it's about a day extra delivery compared to if I were, nearer the store, i.e. Brisbane or like Sydney or something. So is it also just about a delay, 1 day delay for you?
Well, anytime I've ordered stuff through the site or the Apple Store app, which I've used a few times for purchases, it's actually, as I've been tracking it, it's come from over east anyway.
Right.
So I've had it come from, say, Sydney or wherever, and then it takes, at least a couple of days to get over to WA, and then you got another day minimum to come down to where I am. So, I mean, it's expected anyway. For West Australians, you always have at least another two days for delivery. But it's just so convenient ordering online. I've got a local reseller and that, but they do get the new products in, but not straight away. So I'd kind of it's just faster for me to order it direct for Apple. So.
And which of the other stores have you checked out?
Oh yeah, so what I was going to say is I have seen the one in Brisbane City. I've seen the one in Melbourne that's actually in the city. I'm not sure which location that actually comes under, because Melbourne's not listed as a actual store location. But and I've seen the one in Sydney, and yeah, they're all naturally at least the Sydney and Melbourne ones are larger than any of the others I've seen. And yeah, I think every single store has its own kind of charm and it's quite impressive, but those ones particularly. And I'd definitely love to someday check out, the massive ones they've got in America and that kind of thing. What about yourself? Have you seen any of the others?
Yeah, so I've been to, I think, pretty much the same as you, but I've been to the Bondi one, the Sydney CBD one, the Brisbane one, and I generally don't go to ones in shopping malls. I don't know why. I kind of like the charm of, when they can create a store from scratch without being tied to being in a mall. I just think that they do that so much better when they're in a separate building. So yeah, I generally, that's pretty much why I don't go to the Chermside one. So I think I like the Sydney one the most, but have some nostalgic value with the Brisbane one, because when we landed here, I kind of went straight to Brisbane in the morning and went and bought the leather Apple Watch band. It was the first thing other than food that I bought here. So I really just enjoy going to that store.
Yeah, it's all about priorities, you see. So
yeah, exactly. I said other than food.
And I was actually in Melbourne for a short holiday when the 4S came out, and I remember seeing the camp out, the massive line of people, and this was, of course, when Siri was new too. and it was just awesome to actually witness it. I've always seen footage of people lining up for days outside stores, but to actually see it in one of Australia's biggest cities was pretty cool. So we'll just want to finish it off with edible extras. Now, there's been some exciting Olympic-related announcements. Do you want to let the guys know about this, Nick?
Yeah, so from time to time, Apple creates these one-off Apple Watch bands, or at least limited run Apple Watch bands that aren't easily available for anyone. So where they've done this in the past is when the Apple Watch was originally launched, they made these all gold link bracelets for the Apple Watch edition for Beyonce and Karl Lagerfeld. And then they also had some of the later released Apple Watch bands, displayed in some of their fashion, appearances. So the next one that I can remember was they had it for the San Francisco Pride Parade. They had these rainbow nylon bands that they gave to their staff, which, I don't particularly want a rainbow nylon band or I can afford an all gold Apple Watch link bracelet, especially given the price of just the stainless steel one. But, what happens then is you create this desire for something that you can't get your hands on. So now what they've done is for the Olympics, just at the Rio Apple Store, I think it's the Rio Apple Store. It might be newly open, but, so they've got these Apple Watch nylon bands that are based on the country's colors. So they've got Australia, I might not be able to remember them all, but Australia, Brazil, Canada, France, they've got Germany, China, New Zealand, South Africa, United States, United Kingdom, Japan.
And, Canada, Netherlands.
Yeah, Netherlands. So,
and Jamaica and Mexico.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all they've all got their own charm. So some of them, the Australian one is basically green and gold. It's split lengthwise. One side is green, one side is gold, and it's pretty cool. I'd love to have one. The New Zealand one is probably the sleekest of them all. It's all black with this, it's kind of like a light grey, loop to tuck the band in. So that's pretty cool. I think that's better than their normal like black and grey one that you buy, because it's not two-tone, it's just black, which is really nice.
And then of course the Japan is like almost like the inverse of that. So all white with red as that loop, which is pretty cool. Those two being, and Netherlands, orange with that same light grey. So those three kind of carry that same type of understated design. So that's pretty cool. And when I mentioned this to you, you kind of had your eyes on three of them specifically?
Yeah, I was quite keen on obviously the Australian band, given the fact that I live here. Then there's the South African band, which I'm really surprised that they're paying attention to South Africa. It's just when I was still living there wasn't any real Apple presence directly, and now with Siri for South Africa and the Flags Apple Watch band, it just kind of seems like they're sort of more on the radar there, which was quite cool. So
to be honest, you know what I think? I think that they heard about Apple Slice and they're like, oh, this Nic guy's from South Africa. We better, we better even the representation here. So then they just boosted their South Africa presence. So
look, we've created Apple Pay in Australia, among other developments that we've really forced through. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is what happened. And then also I'm quite keen on the UK one. So yeah, in fact, give them all. And if any of our listeners are in Brazil, feel free to sponsor some bands.
Yeah, it's specifically at the, I'll try to pronounce this, the Barra da Tijuca store. That probably sounded terrible to people from Brazil, but that's my attempt. And yeah, I mean, and any of these are cool. I am Australian. I was born in UK but moved here very young age, so I don't remember it, but I actually like the look of the UK one quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, it is a bit hard to tell when you're staring at it as just a band as opposed to when you're wearing it on your wrist, but they did show an Olympian had a USA one on, I think, in a photo, and that looked pretty cool. So they're definitely kind of boosting the interest in the nylon bands.
He was wearing it with the face on the other side of his wrist, though, which really irritated me. I hate that. It just grinds my gears. And to be like, have access to such an exclusive thing and wear it like that, I just was not a fan. But how do you feel about the whole concept of these limited runs or like limited availability that not anyone can just go get them?
I mean, it's obviously it's an added bonus for people that are going to the Olympics. But given the amount of, worldwide representation there is here, I was hoping that they might, at least, even if they did a limited online sale of it afterwards or something. Yeah, so I was a little bit let down that it was exclusive to the event because, I mean, there's already a bit going on around in the news in terms of Olympians actually not wanting to go to the games because of virus outbreaks and that type of thing. It's a bit of a letdown, but the fact that they did it is cool, and I look forward to whatever the next event related or cause related kind of limited edition things they release. Particularly Apple Watch, they've gone all out with customization, so this is very cool to see. And that wraps us up for an episode of Apple Slice. I hope you enjoyed listening. If you want to follow either Nick or myself on Twitter, you can catch me with my handle @SwordToPen, SWORD2PEN, and yourself, Nick.
You can catch me at Nick_Morris. That's just NIC_Morris.
And of course, we have the official Apple Slice Twitter page @AppleSliceAU. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Apple Slice Podcast, as well as by searching us on iTunes, Apple Slice Podcast. Feel free to leave a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of the bands? Are you going to get an iPhone 7? All that type of stuff. Any user feedback or questions you want to pitch to us, we'll be sure to include in a future episode. So yeah, it's been a good chat, Nick, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
Yeah, I'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.